I'm sure you've noticed as we bring faith stories to you that very often a theme seems to emerge. Well, I struggled with this one because there are so many twists and turns, God surprises. This could be a movie. And I'm just thrilled. I actually thought I had interviewed Linda before. I did, but it wasn't on this set. We have waited 21 years for this day, we've discovered. And in the process, you are not anymore Linda Fortin, the girl I met. You are Mrs. Maarten Gerritsen. Welcome from South Holland.
Yeah.
Yep.
And very belated congratulations. I guess we're going back to June 30th, 2001.
Yeah, 11 years ago.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And what a story we have to catch up. But first, for our Dutch viewers, they're going to want to hear the name of the town that you are from, Maarten.
Well, the short version is Hendrik Ido Ambacht. But the longer version is Hendrik Ido Oostendam, Schildmanskinderen, Groot en Klein, Sandelingen en Ambacht. And basically that's just the names of the communities that formed the town.
They wanted everyone included.
Absolutely.
Isn't that appropriate?
Nobody was left out.
Do you have to put all that on the envelope?
No, just Hendrik Ido Ambacht.
No,
Just in case I decide to write.
Yeah.
Now, I thought you had moved to Canada.
No, not yet.
Not
It's
yet.
coming.
It's coming. The process has started and the immigration papers has been sent in. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's start with home. Winnipeg, I think, is where we start with you. Linda, am I right?
Well, it depends if you want to start with where I was born and grew up, or if you want to start when...
You weren't born in Winnipeg, I know
no,
that.
I was born in Churchill.
Churchill,
Fort
Manitoba.
Churchill, actually, in the Army Hospital. And then at the age of 7, we moved to Thompson, and that's where I spent most of my growing up years. And then my parents moved us to South Indian Lake, which was a Cree community. It still is. And I had to go to boarding school, which then I went to Caronport for that.
At Caronport, Briarcrest Bible College,
Yes.
is where you were headed for a very famous youth retreat,
Yes.
Youth Quake.
Yes.
I'm going to draw attention to the picture up in this corner, because this is actually your preparation to leave with the pilot.
Yes.
His name?
James Andrews.
Now, if the weather was bad at that first start, you would go the next day.
Yes, we did.
And crash. And as we pull out, we're going to see.
We flew
plane.
from Moose Jaw to Swan River, and we refueled in Swan River. And my dad said it was about 20 minutes out of Swan River that we crashed on Lake Winnipegosis. And we were about 3 kilometers from the Easterville Highway. But, I mean, it's a huge lake. It's white. The sky was white. And when we were flying, James was trying to find which way was up. And I looked at the artificial horizon and yelled twice at him, "James, watch your instruments." And he pulled back on the controls and we crashed nose and left side.
Dear. Initially, you were both conscious, you prayed together, but he would die of hypothermia. You kind of gave God an ultimatum.
Well, yeah, after James passed away, I fell asleep. And I woke up the next morning around 8, and it was blue sky and, of course, cold. It was minus 21 Celsius that night. And I asked God to let me die or rescue me before noon, because I just didn't want to sit there and sit there.
You gave him 24 hours.
No, it was...
Wasn't it?
8 in the morning till noontime, because I woke up at 8. Oh, okay. We were on the ice for about 23 and a half hours. At 11:30, I heard a plane, and I had this piece of a space-age kind of blanket, and parts kept breaking off and floating away. And I took that and waved it outside, and the guys said when they saw it, they were all like, "Yay," because someone's alive. And, they landed, and the first one to the plane was James's brother-in-law. And he asked, "Is he unconscious?" I said, "No, he's dead." And then they just tore the top off like a tin can and put me in the other plane and flew me off to the Paw Hospital.
Linda, you would lose both legs below the knee and your good eye, your right eye, because at the time you only had 10%
in this one.
your left eye. It has worked hard and improved. It's up to
Yeah,
30%. That's kind of nice, 30 years later.
Yes.
Very traumatic, but your attitude in all of this, first you say God prepared you for this.
It was really amazing. At Youthquake, the theme was the race of life. And one of the guest speakers was a man named Jim Martinson. And Jim Martinson was a double amputee. He'd lost his legs in the Vietnam War. And 3 times over the weekend I spoke with him, well, how do your legs work and how do your socks stay up? And just, I was a nursing student. These
You're
were
just
questions
curious
I wanted.
how it all works.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my husband will tell you I ask a lot of questions. And I mean, the man was nice and he talked to me. And then 6 weeks later, I wrote him a letter and said, hey, guess what happened to me? And I thanked him for being there because it made it okay. Even though I knew I was losing my legs or had lost my legs, I knew that I could still trust God with my future.
Amazing. More shots of the plane here. You anticipated having an empathy for your future patients in a nursing career that just didn't work. You would have to shift. Social work became the direction. But maybe the biggest shift, and I'm going to get Maarten to tell the story of how this woman in Canada connected with you in the Netherlands. Some are going to guess, of course, but it's an interesting story.
Oh, absolutely. It's absolutely a miracle what happened. It was in 1998, on a Friday evening. I was just minding my own business, doing whatever on my own computer, being in Holland. And normally on a Friday night, I would go out, like friends playing some pool. On that Friday night, I was home. And I was sitting by my computer, and in those days we had those very early instant messenger programs, ICQ, and it was on. I wasn't doing anything, and all of a sudden a little message popped up with a question. Have you ever heard of C.S. Lewis? The reason for that was on these instant messenger programs, they used nicknames. My nickname was Gandalf from The Lord of the Rings.
By Tolkien.
By Tolkien.
And Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were friends.
And Linda was sitting in Thompson, Manitoba, being a little bit bored because nobody online of her contacts was online. And she was random searching for somebody to talk to. And then she saw Gandalf and she thought, oh, I wonder if you have ever heard of C.S. Lewis. That's how the message came. And I said, no, I never have any. No, I had never heard of C.S. Lewis.
So I thought I should educate him.
Yeah.
So a friendship developed right away.
Absolutely. It's we started like chatting to each other on the weekend, and I think in December of '98 we made our first phone calls.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, you both made commitments to Christ
Yeah.
early in life.
Yes.
You earlier than Maarten. I think you were about 14, Maarten.
14.
But you kind of drifted away from church in your high school years, and
I did,
you
yeah.
used the word disappointed.
Disappointed. Sometimes you don't feel connected to a group, and you
This
have.
was more about church than God. Disappointed.
Yes,
with
and
church.
and it was more about me maybe, looking back. Like I wasn't ready yet. Like I knew that Christ saved me, but I never felt at that point in life connected to church. So I drifted a bit away, and the funny thing was that like I never lost my faith or wondered. I prayed, but I just didn't go to church, and it was there.
Now, a road trip with Linda in Canada would restore your confidence in the body of Christ, church community. I don't know where you took them, Linda, but it really worked.
Well, there was a huge church in Vancouver we were in, and Lacombe. We went to my brother's church too.
And Thompson.
Yeah, and people just loved him, and yeah, it was.
And I met very wonderful church-going people who at the table talked about Christ, And that was normal. For me, that was not normal.
Well, Dr.
Jesus,
Penner,
part of their
Absolutely.
everyday life. Oh, yes.
we stayed in
Oh,
there.
let's just mention Dr. Lauren Penner.
We
He's in
stayed
Moose
in-
Jaw now, and we love him.
Yeah.
Doctor on campus for years.
Yeah.
This would land you in a church ultimately for a very special day, Maarten,
Yeah.
in Winnipeg, as we mentioned, your wedding day. I'll let you hold this a little better.
June 30th.
Beautiful day.
2001.
And then you would take your bride to the Netherlands.
Yep.
And how many years later would you face perhaps your most scary crisis? I guess that would be
2007.
August 20th,
Yeah.
2007.
Yeah.
Bicycling home,
Yep.
a bit of a headache.
An instant headache. I was like 500 meters from home, and all of a sudden, poof, I had a headache, splitting headache in my head. I parked my bike in the garden, and I went inside, and Linda, I have a headache. It's not feeling good. So
Good thing Linda was there.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, the first thing I did was call Dr. Penner.
Yeah.
And he wasn't in, but Catherine was, and she said, get him to emergency.
We have to fast track. It was an aneurysm.
Yes.
First surgery was not successful.
No.
No.
And you were very alone in the hospital.
Yeah.
And not unlike Linda in that crashed plane, you were doing business with God.
Oh, yeah. Me and God had a talk that night. And, well, you're there, you're a young man, you're strong, and all of a sudden you're weak like a baby. And I was there with God, and God comforted me, kept me in his arms. Yeah.
I started this program saying it was hard to find a singular theme in all the events, and we've had to compress everything of your separate journeys and your journey together. But really, there is a theme here, pressed into knowing no helper but God. I love that old poem. And both of you, surprisingly, maybe for some, found your faith deepened.
Oh, yeah.
Your relationship with the Lord strengthened in most unwelcome crises.
Well, mine was so changed because I know if I died in that plane crash that I was a child of God. There was no doubt about it. But my faith at that point, when I look back at it, was more inherited. It's how I grew up. It's, you know, what we did. We went to church. But I loved the
Bible
Lord.
camp, you had everything,
Yes.
didn't you?
Just like, you know, how Paul has his credentials. Well, I had mine too.
Check, check, check.
Yeah, exactly. Sunday school teacher. And when that accident happened, there was nobody else I could trust but God. I mean, my parents were helpless. Before, my parents provided everything, and now it was only God. And it changed something in me that made his love experienced, and that I could trust him regardless of the outcome. And for me, that was amazing. You know, when you're faced with that mountain of change in your life.
And Maarten, when you have that experience of intimacy with God, you don't ever want to go anywhere else, right?
No, actually, it's phenomenal. The day after I woke up, and Linda went home, and she started emailing people and phoning people, and later on I found out that all over the world people were praying for me.
That's the other common denominator in your stories. Your mom had your hospital room full of people praying. You had people all over the world praying. Prayer and the presence of God that brings you to that place of,
Absolutely.
oh, I'm sure we've all heard it. You'll never know Jesus is all you need until he's all you have.
Right.
So grateful for this message. And I don't know if by the time you get to Canada, get through all that red tape and get here, will you be a pastor, Maarten? I know you're preparing. You're in studies now.
God called me last year to be a pastor, and I started the training, like a Master of Divinity, at Providence Seminary, Otterburn, Manitoba.
And where will you land? Winnipeg?
Oh yeah, we spent our first week here house hunting, and what a difficult thing to do.
Oh, let's encourage our viewers to pray for just the right spot. For the Gerritsens, Pastor and Mrs. soon to be. And I'm going to leave us with Psalm 84:7, because if I had this picture, I would put it at the bottom. They go from strength to strength. No matter what we go through, the Lord Jesus Christ always makes that possible. For you and for me, we can go from strength to strength. Maybe you're in the crucible right now. Maybe your whole world is upside down. Please call our prayer line. Allow us to pray with you, to believe with you for the good thing God is waiting to do. This is not the end. He's still working on you to make you all He wants you to be, and His plans for you are good. God bless you both.